My name is Fred Cook, and I drive school bus.
My name is Leanne Murchie, and I'm a school bus driver for TCAPS. It's been a very wonderful experience.
When I first hired in, one of the previous bus drivers told me that this particular job, driving a school bus, is the best job on earth. So I immediately took to it, and I have to agree that this is one of the best jobs that anyone can do.
What prompted me in the very beginning, I have a college degree, and she said, "You're in the safest vehicle in the world on the road." So I thought, well, I'm gonna try. Because I would be on the same time schedule as my own children. And when they were off, I was off. When holidays, I was there. So it was the best of both worlds. TCAPS offers jobs elsewhere within the system.
Between routes, I used to, for 12, 13 years, I did lunch duty over at East Middle School, and now I paint.
They're real good about finding people the hours that they need during the course of the day to make the job great. We have Mesa Insurance. The whole district has it. It's awesome. It's the best health insurance. We offer a 401k. There's a sign-on bonus. It's a win-win situation.
The most important thing, I think, coming to work at TCAPS is you understand that you are part of a team. It's a part of a collective. It's not just bus drivers and then versus teachers. It's not that. We all are in this thing called education together.
If a person likes kids, generally likes kids, this is a perfect job.
So I'm talking to kids all day, and that experience is really heartwarming, and I continue to understand what it means to be a part of the community.
You are an educator. You have a chance to touch children's lives every day. And don't think that you don't. You are such an important part of the wheel of education.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. We would like to welcome the audience and thank you for attending. Viewers may watch Board of Education meetings and Board Committee meetings live on TV 190 or online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. Is there any public comment? No? Okay, hearing no public comment, we will move on to procedural items. Draft committee meeting minutes from September 28th. Are there any changes?
I had none.
No? Okay. Hearing none, minutes remain as posted. And then professional development, referring to Dr. Van Wagner.
Okay, so we have, with that, so help me out, let's see where that's at in here. Let's see it. Thank you, okay. So part of my contract each year, I attend the ASA conference, and so that is something that I'm required to bring to the board for approval. And so this is my official request for that, and that has to be approved by the full board, so.
All right. Any questions on that, or if not, does that have to go on to consent,
Is it
right?
consent?
It's just consent.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the American Association of Superintendents?
Correct.
Okay.
So I would put it on consent.
Well, we have other
San Diego, huh?
trips
is.
too. And you go to that one
In
annually.
February.
I do go to that one, it's a one national one. Yep.
Are you-
Convenient.
Are there, just out of curiosity, are there particular sessions you're looking forward to?
Have just announcing them, they are, so,
Okay.
we got a little bit, it's not till February, so they're just kind of putting all that together and we'll get that, so. But this is the one last year where I had the chance, oddly enough, to see Portage and the work they had done with their student advisory, group. And so, like I said, I was crazy, I had to, go to our National Association
Right.
meeting to see somebody from Michigan, but just the way it kind of turned out, so. There's always, a lot of sessions there, so it'll be interesting to see what's on the docket for it.
Okay.
So that can go on the second item on 8B on consent. And any other questions on that? Then moving to the agenda review for November 13th.
Okay, so we have our standard call to order pledge and review the agenda. Recognition, we will have our Traverse Bay Sunrise Rotary Club in. This is the group that does a lot of different events, such as the packing of the backpacks that are given to our students, and there's a Imagination Library with Dolly Parton they've started, and so there's a lot of things there. So we'll have them in and present them with a certificate and talk about a lot of the great things they help with our kids. We'll have our first public comment. We kind of have a slew under the superintendent's report this month. We have legislative update, district highlights. We do have a required 31AA plan of use, and that is the money we get from the state for mental health and school safety. And then we will have a presentation from Train. Our finance committee had the chance to see that yesterday and did pass that on for the full board meeting. We have planned the Safer Kids, Safer Schools presentation. The committee will see that today. And have an opportunity to see that and give any thoughts, and again, looking to pass it on for the full board. And we will have our audit of financial report. So as we do each year, we have a call, or in person, I don't know which it is yet, with our auditors, and so they'll do that presentation. We'll have our committee report outs for the month. We will have the MASB Leadership Conference in between there, and I know we have, I believe, 3 members going to that, and I am also going the first day, that Friday. And then we'll have our consent agenda, which includes just some informational items for personnel. Field trips, we do have 4 field trips that are on there. Those were reviewed by the curriculum committee, all passed on for consent. We have meeting minutes as well under consent. Discussion, school safety update. We will have, I have on there the property offers, very brief. It's just an update to the community that we do have finally come to the point of official purchase agreement on Boardman and a listing for Bertha Voss. We'll have our second public comment. We will have a closed session for pending litigation. And then coming out of that is the plan right now for Altria settlement resolution. This is similar to the Jewel resolution that happened with a lawsuit with vaping. I will tell you, it's much smaller in that aspect, but again, it is something that we do have to go over. And then board president closing remarks and adjournment.
On 9B, do you want to change it from property offers to property updates?
Yes.
Just, would indicate
Yep,
that we
sounds
have
good.
Property offer updates.
property updates.
Okay.
We can do that.
And I had a question about a couple things. So the superintendent's report, item 6C, remind us, what is the 31AA plan?
So 31AA, that's our mental health and school safety money that we get by state law. We have to submit a plan. We have to present that to the board. on what that is with those
Okay.
funds.
So that's an annual appropriation?
It is. It's actually, it was, last year was new. We had two separate ones, one for mental health, one for school safety. They've blended it all into one pot now that we get, and we just have to present by law that element.
And how much is allocated to TCAPS this year?
I'd have to look at our state aid report. I want to say, I couldn't, I don't want to
can
guess.
probably, yeah, get back
don't
to
wanna
us.
guess.
Okay.
It'll be on there, but
Okay.
I will tell you, it's a very significant amount. I want to say around $1 million total
Okay,
between the two.
okay. And then I also wanted to ask, because it's on our agenda today, the naming rights issue?
We'll get into that. That's not on here unless
Yeah.
you guys want, if I want to have a discussion first. I didn't arbitrarily put it on because I just don't know where you want to go and I need committee's
Okay.
input.
Okay. Yep. And then lastly, I just want to note the Bertha Voss School Building listing is live
Yep.
at $725,000. So if anyone is interested in buying a school and adjacent property, it is available
There you go.
with a listing agent. And then lastly, the Altria. So is Altria like a alternate? I mean, are they
Another
just like
company, different
there's-
company, like Jewel.
Philip
yeah,
Morris,
another
yeah,
company.
distributing
Philip Morris, like it used
Yes,
to be.
yes, correct.
It used to be Philip Morris.
Correct.
e-cigarettes or
No, it's
Vape,
like-
vape,
the vaping.
juices and that element.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. Formerly Philip Morris, formerly known as
Came
Philip
up
Morris.
with a nice name.
Wow.
Much
Who would
friendly.
have guessed that? Okay, thank you.
All right, and then I thought I had another. On the, I know you got the Safer Kids, Safer Schools presentation that were brought up into superintendent's report, which is fine on that, but do you want, I know that we have a standing item as
It
schools.
can go under there if you'd rather. We just wanted to kind of have them all and then them be able to go.
I think it'd be better to have it in that spot, but if you want, do you want to strike 9A?
We can. I think it would be appropriate this month because of the presentation.
Exactly.
I would be
I don't
be
wanna-
fine with it.
I
I
don't
really
wanna-
don't have anything other than that.
That's
so-
why I didn't
yeah.
need to have you just say, we don't have anything
I
when we
thought of
did.
it, but because it's been standing, if the committee wants to do that, more than supportive of it.
Okay, so if there's no objection, we'll strike 9A, and then property updates will now become the sole discussion item 9A in that section.
For now. For now.
For now.
For now, yeah. Okay. All right,
I just want to point out that co-founder should probably be capitalized with the founder as well. With F.
Where's that?
Just under 6E. It's just a title thing.
I did not know that one.
That's actually been changed because they've added some more presenters, so that language is
Okay.
on.
Oh,
So.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other agenda items for now?
No.
Okay. Then we'll move on to informational items. HR, deferred to Connie Taylor.
Yes. We have, once again, sharing some of our current vacancies that are still existing out there in the field. We have a number of kitchen vacancies right now, so food service is definitely an area that we're concentrating on. We have 2 kitchen leader positions available, as well as 7 openings for cook's assistants. We have had a number of promising interviews this week, and we have more today. So we're hoping to fill the majority of those, but then we'd also have a B cook position that's available. With our TC CAPSA, our support group there, we also have 2 openings for our ELL, English Learner Aid positions, as well as 2 openings in our Indigenous Education Program, and 4 openings for Special Education Assistants. Within our ASFE group, we have 2 current vacancies, a second shift custodian at Central High School, as well as a lead custodian at Traverse Heights Elementary. And as we share almost every week, we continue to have openings in our extended day programs, multiple openings. So anyone who's interested in some before or after school programming, we would love to hear from you. And as usual, we're holding our open interviews on Thursday the 9th. So that's next week from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And a little bit different this time of year. We do have a few teacher vacancies that we're looking at. They're currently covered with substitutes, but looking for permanent replacements, elementary PE position. but we'll be interviewing for those on Friday. And we also have elementary opening for a mid-year retirement, but that will be, we'll be setting up interviews. So anyone interested, we'll be setting those interviews up soon. And then lastly, a vacant early childhood special education teaching position as we're adding a new classroom based on need. So those are our staffing updates for this week. And then we also wanted to share out with you some upcoming professional development opportunities. One of the things we have a commitment this year is to expand our opportunities to our hourly group. So I think I'd shared in a previous meeting, we sent out a survey to see what the need was. What are some of the areas that they'd like for us to provide professional development? Earlier this year, we did some student supports, de-escalation, those sorts of trainings for our staff. That was a number one priority. And then they also indicated the need for some additional technology support. And so we've had one round of those, and taking the feedback and building upon those, we're going to be offering some trainings this week and in December, and January and February. And we've modified, March, April, and May, all the way through the rest of the year, and modified the times so it's more conducive to all of our staff groups. It's hard to capture everyone, bus drivers, everyone based on their schedule, but we're offering different times so that they can attend. So we're gonna continue to explore the need and provide those out to staff to help them grow and develop within our organization. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention a fun tradition that we started last year is recognizing our veterans who currently work for TCAPS. And so next week, Associate Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Kirsten Perkowski, and I will have the pleasure of going around the district and providing each one of those individuals with a certificate of recognition and appreciation on behalf of the Board of Education and Administration of TCAPS. That's always a fun day. And that concludes my report.
Ms. Taylor, I just have one question. For the extended day positions, is that because we are looking to expand services for the second semester of this year, or those existing vacancies?
Those are current vacancies, but we continue, as well as I think every employer in the Traverse City area, get requests for daycare opportunities. And we are certainly willing to look to expand those, but we are having a very difficult time staffing those. So if we were to have sufficient applicants for that, we could certainly consider expanding those opportunities, but right now that's just our current need.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Moving on to communication update, phone to Ginger Smith.
Thank you. First, I would like to just give a shout out regarding our groundbreaking events that we held last Friday on the 27th for both Central High School and West Senior High School Manufacturing and Innovation Centers. The events, especially at Central High School, were fabulous. We had amazing weather for the first, and we had questionable weather for the second. But a big thank you to all the students, staff, and Board of Education members who were available on Friday to participate in those events. And also a big thank you for Miller Davis, who assisted us with all of the supplies and the setup for both of those events to make them both memorable and successful. So we're happy to kick off the work on those, and I do see that we've got some gear sitting outside Central High School, so it has begun. Second of all, I just want to give an update on TCAPS podcasts. Our EdTech Loop has been actually in progress for 6 years, but it did kind of take a slow stop at COVID and took a long time to kind of rev back up. Larry Burden and Danielle Brostrom are now back to doing a weekly podcast. And right now for this year, they have 3 goals centered around artificial intelligence, digital citizenship, and a tech tool of the week. So this podcast is geared towards educators, not just TCAPS, but educators nationwide and parents. So it's a very informational and fun podcast, and it is available on all platforms for either download or listening. So we invite the community and all of you to check that out.
Any questions on the events? There was certainly a lot of rain for the second event, for sure. Naming right? Sorry.
Where can we find that podcast?
On any platform where you would find your podcasts. It's available on all of them, so your Apple, you know,
And what's it called specifically?
Ed Tech Loop.
Ed Tech Loop. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, coincidentally, I just found that on LinkedIn
Yes.
yesterday.
Yes.
So Larry Burden had done a very nice long post with key excerpts, and it was part 2 of the 3-part series on artificial intelligence.
Yes, the third will be next week with Evan.
Urbanovich.
And then the conclusion where AI just does it for itself and then does a presentation. So, okay, then any other questions on communications? Then moving on to naming rights, deferring to Dr. Val Wagner.
Okay, so we've had a request from a group of parents that are a part of the tennis boosters at Central High School. With the courts being all renovated and new fencing and all that, they have come to us with a request to consider naming the courts after the former coach Larry Nykirk. Or the Nykirk family. Both he and his wife are still very active in supporting and promoting the tennis program at Central High School. So, you know, for me, it's very, very well deserving. Larry's a fabulous guy. I've had the chance to get to know him when every day he was up at the tennis courts looking at progress. We'd have the chance to talk, and I'm really, truly an icon of our community and supporting our kids, especially at Central High. That being said, we have a policy that kind of, you know, is, it allows for it, but it really gives, how do I say it, really says the board should refrain from it, except maybe in very certain circumstances. And so, you know, the hard part with it is we have lots of fields. We have tennis courts at both. We have, you know, turf fields now at both. We have tracks at both. And we have a lot of deserving people. And so, you know, based on the policy, I felt like I needed to bring it forward to the board and the committee first to see if it's something that you think needs a full board discussion, you know, based on the policy, and just really looking for some guidance of opinion with the policy as it states. So that's where it is from that standpoint.
I can start. So I'm looking at the policy number 7115, naming of new facilities, and that describes construction of a new school facility. So one question I have is, are tennis courts at Central High School considered a new school facility?
You know, technically probably no, but all being all redone, it basically is. And, you know, we really don't have anything in policy that has anything different about an existing or a new facility. It was designed around the idea of new. You know, and I gave the 2 policies we have is that next one that we gave you as well on naming rights, but it's really a lot more geared towards I think of gifting, you know, from that aspect. So it kind of fell between the 2 on me. I don't, you know, there isn't a clear, to me, the naming of new facilities was as close to what this is as we have in policy. You know, to me, as we go through the policy revisions, in my opinion, it should be something a naming of new and current facilities.
Yeah.
You know, but this is what it is, as we said.
Either way, though, because as you
Yeah.
said, there isn't.
But in a weird way, this kind of came up because of all of the renovation, which is basically new from that standpoint. So,
Right, so that policy does seem more appropriate than the naming rights policy 7250, which is where the district is selling the right to name
exactly.
a policy, right? Like,
Right.
and they talk about a contract.
To me, this is
So-
where Pepsi Field, you know, or something
Right.
like that, or, you know, and it has a certain limit time and things like that. If the board ever, you know, chose something like that, that's, you know, what that is, where,
What
you
did
know,
we change on this policy? It says last revised April 8th, 2021.
I don't, that's a good question.
I don't remember.
Do you happen to know?
I think it was
That
the
would've-
plaque. I think it was the plaque because of Montessori.
A
I
dedicated.
remember adding. I don't remember adding that.
You mean it was added or just
I think
revised?
it was revised.
To add more names?
I think it did. I think it had the
Construction.
I want to say architect or the CM. I think it was the architect.
Okay.
It was one of them.
So it's
that-
probably a pretty minor one that we.
It is, because
Okay.
I look at the plaque like at Eastern and so there was something there that was changed from that
Yeah.
standpoint.
Okay.
I wasn't here in May or
Yeah.
April 21, but it's
Yeah.
a technical change.
So it must have been like the change of someone's title or like spelling or
And I believe it was the New
Right,
Building
I
When
remember. There's a
Commission
bunch of
was
technical-
another thing too that I think was looked at from that standpoint.
It's not a big deal. I just.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it might have been a Troon change, right? We don't
Yeah.
know if it was
Yeah.
district
Title changes,
initiated.
we typically, so we don't bring those forward, that's when someone's like position title changes or we
They usually
notice
just
like
go
a
consent.
spelling error or something like that, and we just send it just to do like
Yeah.
a minor update that doesn't actually affect the policy, but.
Okay. That's why
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay. Right. So I would just say, well, I'd like to hear from other trustees, their thoughts. I mean, I'm, fine in honoring this individual or his family with this facility, knowing the history of service he's given for tennis at Central High School and continues to give. I would just like to see the policy language to conform with what we want to do, because I do feel like when a new construction of a new facility is not exactly
ya.
what
I hear
we
ya.
have right now. And I mean, you could add a clause like, or substantial renovations to an existing facility.
I don't think we need,
You
because
know?
we've got a new policy. I was going to say, we could just look
Yeah.
at what the new Troon
I'll
policy
make note
would
of
be.
that, so when we adopt the new Troon policies, we can make sure it reflects that as well.
But don't we need the new policy in place before we accept the name?
No.
But-
I mean, first of all, if it fell outside of this, then there wouldn't be a policy, so we can do whatever we wanted. But then, secondly, I think we would be able to fulfill this anyway. So it's either we fulfill this or there isn't a policy and we can do whatever anyway. So,
You feel like legally that's sound?
Correct. If there's an absence of the policy, then it gives the board complete discretion.
we either have complete discretion or we follow the policy that we're going to do anyway. I would
Yeah.
suggest we would
And
follow
how's-
this.
And I kind of feel in the spirit of this, they were doing it because it was all renovated and basically new.
I would
you know,
agree.
yeah.
I would consider it a new facility
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you'll see a rededication of a,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know anybody wanted their name on what was there before.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So, but the hard part for me was that, and again, this is board policy of boards from, the past, is that in general, the board shall refrain from naming facilities or portions of facilities after individuals.
Yeah.
But then it does obviously.
But
give
it
the
does,
straight
but
up-
it, then,
should-
but then it
should we
gives the
choose
board,
to.
yeah, exactly. So it was definitely a board call here, based on that for me. And I thought maybe even here's my hard part, and again, this is not Larry at all, he's well deserving, is that, how do you leave room for the next person?
That was-
Or, and then if you do this, you have John Lober for track for 30 years, just got into the Hall of Fame for track coach, how do you not that?
That's my main concern.
Nothing was ever really named, for Jim Uli, who was a longtime coach at Central High School, and there's a practice field there. West is still kind of in its infancy of 25 years and hasn't really had any long-standing coaches, so are you going to name something on one side and not the others? That's the part here I struggled with. So I did wonder, could we play around with maybe naming a court? Like Center Court, like the Nykirk, Family Center Court, something that still leaves some room. But I think that there was, a little, I talked with Jessie a little bit about that, and she thought that there's no real way to, label it right. And, it's still something I think we could explore, but it really is something that I need the board to weigh in on.
I sort of love the idea of having students help name, something like that, because,
Which is
it's-
what we've done with,
Right.
with the Trojan Athletic Center. We're doing it with West.
gives
in that
them
same
some
way.
ownership and some pride in, that space.
I'll tell you though, the tennis kids, I'm sure, would be in very much support for Larry. He's done a ton for the program, so.
Is there any precedent in our district then for naming a facility after an individual?
Buildings,
Besides Ida B. Tompkins.
right?
Yeah.
And Glen Loomis, and, you
Right,
know.
which are, I mean, that was
the
eons. Those were
elementary
eons ago.
schools, a lot, you
Yeah,
know. from
but
that
nothing in the
standpoint.
last 20 years
No,
that anybody knows
that I'm
of?
aware of.
We
that I can
don't have
think
any
of.
other
Yeah.
major facilities built. Montessori was,
Eastern was obviously not
Named
named
after
after
Maria
anybody.
Montessori.
Montessori was TCAPS Montessori. So not that come to mind right away.
Yep. I mean, I will note that the second paragraph does say, in general, the board shall refrain from naming facilities or portions of facilities after individuals, but the second sentence is,
Right.
should the board choose to consider naming a facility for an individual, it shall follow the steps as noted above. So it does give us the leeway.
Oh yeah, I think we definitely have the complete leeway. I just think we have to decide which we can put on as the full board, obviously, and then just. I don't want to get into the business of judging someone's credentials and if they're worthy of a name of something and then competing later, and that's just a worry of
I don't
where
know
we
who
go.
this person is. I don't want to upset anybody. I mean, to me, if it says we're refraining, that's guidance for us.
I
right?
think the path of where we would go is
Right.
problematic.
Right.
So I think that's the key part for me. Is like it's not a judgment on Larry. It's
No.
a judgment on
Or the boosters,
Yeah.
for that matter.
And it generally, I don't want to be in a position later that we say no to something and then create issues in the community. So, with that, though, I think we can just put it on that board discussion. That's definitely a board.
Well, so read the policy. I think it's really important to carefully look at it.
I-
When construction of the new facility is approved for the Board of Education, steps shall be taken to name the facility. The Board Executive Committee shall consider names for the new facility. Once the Board Executive Committee has preliminarily approved a name, the superintendent designee will bring forward the recommendation to the full board meeting for discussion and
I
approval.
get that part, but before we even go to that route, I would get the board to weigh in on the policy.
Again, your guys' deal. I just want to make sure that we're,
Yeah.
Could
following
pick
what's here.
a name, but I feel like that sets almost like a recommendation, whereas I think we are to the point where we need legitimate, unbiased board feedback. Personally. So I would not send a name for discussion. I would send the policy for discussion.
Right. That was my point, that I feel like the policy needs to be tidied up before we act on it.
And I don't know if that, but I think we at least need to know what we would
Others'
do.
thoughts are.
But either way, I guess we need to talk about. That's a fair.
What's the timing for this particular policy, like in the series that you're reviewing?
I'm sorry, what section is it?
This is 7115.
Facilities and operations.
Mm-hmm.
That's a February
Mhm.
conversation.
And the board can wait till then, right? The committee. If you guys want to just a little bit punt on this till we can get to that point to do that, you can. But you tell me where you want to go.
I mean, we can just bring up that policy and look at it and have that general discussion now anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the
Which will guide you
facilities
with
there,
making that.
Larry, God willing, is in really good health, so I don't
ask?
see an immediate need if the board wants to, but, again, your call.
Were we going to name this tennis court?
No, it's already kind of, I think, traditionally been the Trojan Tennis Complex,
Okay. So it wasn't even,
But-
there wasn't even a suggested different name or new name.
And I will tell you, one thing that's interesting about this, I'm pretty sure, it wasn't here, but there is a tennis building there, and I believe that building was built by the Boosters, and it has a plaque dedicated to Larry on the building.
Is that a new building?
No,
Okay.
that's been the existing building long before I got here, but I'm pretty sure the Boosters built that building, and like I said, it does have a dedication to Larry for that building.
I guess the last
Which,
question, go
Not
ahead.
sure how that happened exactly, but like I said, because the boosters did it and paid for it, I think, we've done, I think, Christine's really tried to do some work, with Cindy in the past and now Connie to tidy some of these up, that we have very structured things for across, so that those kind of here's and there, and the boosters doing this one and that it doesn't, get done that way, but
We
there
didn't
is
even have
that
this
element
policy
that's
until 27. I don't know what policy there was before, but we didn't have this one until 2017
Right.
anyway.
And that was our conversation last year, John, around memorials and
Right.
those,
Yeah.
those sorts
Right.
of things as well. This isn't a memorial. Similarly,
Yeah.
do something personalized. Who's caring for it? What's the process?
So one other thought that I had, this is just an idea to consider, but it aligns with what you were getting at, Dr. Van Wagener, about a time frame. you know, how do we honor somebody who's been a major figure, but then accommodate the future, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, I wonder if we think about putting a time limit on this, like, for 20 years. And, I mean, that's a board way down the road, but then they can reconsider. And if that particular individual is still the historical standout person we want to continue to honor, so be it. But it would give leeway to the district to, you know, rename a facility in the future if they wanted.
If you go that route, yes, let me give you another, you know, and this has, I want to make clear, this has absolutely nothing to do with Larry or this individual.
Right,
In
of
my
course.
past,
Yeah.
in a former district, we had a situation where we had to take the name off because of any legal, criminal activity that a person had done. It wouldn't be bad to give superintendent or designee leeway, you know, or a process or something for if in the you know, discussion that there needs to be. It's probably not bad, because I was in a weird spot there. I arbitrarily did it because I had some board members that are like, you have to.
Yeah.
You know, like, but without a board meeting, you know, like you had to, and it really was bad, you know, and so.
Well, that's a different scenario.
It is, but while I'm just saying, if you're
Yeah.
gonna go with something
Yeah.
in that kind of, you know, in policy.
Right.
It wouldn't be bad foresight to think
was
about
already in my
something
mind.
like that and to put something in there that gives that discretion or that, to bring that to, or agreement of the board president and superintendent, something like that to, you know, remove somebody's name or designation or something
I think
like
it
that.
should still be board action, full board action. Yeah.
But I think that's kind of why I wanted to progress it as a policy. That was actually one specific item I had on my list. So like I wanted to separate, because this has nothing to do with Larry and I.
I know,
I want to have
I
these
know,
conversations
I
at the
know,
same
I
time.
know.
so-
Yes, but
I know.
we're creating
No, but that's why I want
precedent.
that's why I want to separate the policy first, and then we can come back around and do any.
I agree.
And like I said, so if, I don't see a hurt in waiting till February when you get to the policy, you know, in that aspect, if you want. And we can just say that we want to look at some of those things, and so it's not, you know, at this point, the committee doesn't feel bringing it forward at this time is the right moment, but we're just kicking it a little bit down the curb, but we're going to address it. Or if you want to deal with that issue then and then come back and revise, actually say we're going to need to revise the policy based on this decision or other factors, when that comes up, you can do it then.
I mean, my personal opinion is, I mean, we have a relatively light agenda. Not like there's never a light agenda, but a relatively light agenda
Okay?
For November 13th.
for November 13th. That we may as well just at least have the discussion, and if we kick it, we kick it. But I think we can, because when we come up with all of these policies, I feel like there's already going to be enough discussion around it. If we can get one out the way that is fresh on the mind. That's my personal opinion.
Did you want to say?
I think go ahead. No,
I know I was looking for any guidance.
I was
if you
gonna say,
had
I think
any
there's a little
preference.
bit of a broader discussion, kind of getting to your point too, which is, you know, we have people that work in this district for 20, 25 years and are excellent educators. Do we name their classrooms after them? You know, do we like start going down the road of saying, who do we pick and choose for this?
And I think that's the spirit of the policy.
Right.
That's sitting in front of you.
It's a little concerning for me.
So my gut is that we.
But I
put
don't
it-
want to dehumanize it either, if that makes sense.
I think we
So-
should put it on for discussion, but I do feel like we may reach where we need to have some more time to think about it, which would time well with the February. But if we come to some consensus, we can talk about it.
And the last thing I want to just give the committee, it doesn't refrain us from still doing something.
Right.
You know, it can be a plaque, it can be a sign, a dedication, you know, plaque,
Some
you know,
kind of
but not
recognition.
formally naming a facility, you know. So just think of that in terms of this, you know, in your thoughts for the board discussion as well. And, you know, happy to take some direction there.
You know what I think is, loving the new area that they built next to the tennis courts, the sitting area. I could see a tree going there, you know, with somebody's name on it or something really.
Well, our problem is we have the memorial element, you know, the policy that we passed that, you know, now you
But you
get
can't.
upkeep and all those kind
Yeah.
of things. So kind of be careful with that. But, you know, like I say, the memorial does have some time frame things on it, you know, with that. So, like I said, it's just food for thought here for the discussion, and we'll take,
But that
you know,
is a
your lead
process.
based on where you want to go with it.
It's a process in place already, so it's a good one.
And I just want to ask Ms. Taylor, do you think that before the November 13th board meeting, then, if we're going to have this as a discussion item, could we reach out to Troon and see what their latest and greatest policy is, and then maybe Neola, you know, like look at a couple different policy options?
Yeah, we currently have the templates for all the policies, so
Okay.
we can certainly pull that up.
Yeah, and just let us look at that in the packet in advance. Okay, thank you.
And we'll grab that and we'll get it to Maggie to get out to them.
So just to be clear, we're gonna review board policy 7115 and 7250 as a discussion item?
Yep, as 9B.
Okay, got it.
All right. Any more discussion on that item? And then moving on to Safer Kids, Safer Schools update. Dr. Wagner.
Okay, so at this time, we'll have Jay Berger come up, and Jay's talked to us a couple times before. I appreciate all of he and Kathleen's support as well. And we'll go ahead and give him an opportunity to present. I'd remind board members, much like our presentation with Train yesterday for finance, if there's anything to the presentation you would like, you know, Jay to think about or maybe have for the board meeting presentation, please feel free to share that. Any thoughts or questions that, you know, might bring some clarity for the full board, as we have generally many more of our public people in our community, you know, watch the full board meeting, so it only contributes to helpful communication in what they're trying to do. So with that, I'll pass it off to Jay.
Thank you, Dr. Van Wagner. It is always something I very much appreciate to come in front of the board and the district and just share another example of every time I have an interaction with a TCAPS employee, I am blown away by how deeply they care about our kids. And I'm a member of the Morning Rotary, and yesterday we had Kurt Rainey and Brian Kay come from two of our elementary schools who have some of the biggest needs, and it was so obvious how much they cared about kids and how hard they worked to be in the classroom. And Kirsten Jones Morgan, I texted her and asked if she could come, and it was so great because she didn't even hesitate. She said, I'll be there, because she wanted to support these principals. So again, I don't know if you get those kind of feedback things, but they are really important to us. And that's one of the things that came out of our Safer Kids, Safer Schools work, is people really care deeply and appreciate the work that people do. Board members, this policy stuff drives me crazy. I could not do that. it would be, I would tap out after 5 minutes. But I can do this kind of thing, and I get emotional about it because it's a big deal. And we'll share some of what we learned, but it's really humbling. We worked very hard on this, and we didn't really know what we were doing. People said you kind of built the airplane as you were going. We did. We didn't really know what the right thing to do was, but the documents that we have today to share with you really represent the best work of our community over the past 17 months. And I thought this was a 3-month gig, and here we are 17 months later. And as you all know, it doesn't end. It's an ongoing thing, and it really has to become part of the culture. There's over 1,000 hours that went into the report. And again, this is one that really grabs me because I'm a financial guy. We spent over $50,000, all from privately raised funds, in order to get people from the community to give us their ideas and their thoughts. So that's a big responsibility. We want to make sure that money was used wisely, that we communicate clearly, and that we don't just have this become something that just was a pat on the head and a, good job. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and start just one kind of note. When you do this kind of thing, you learn how to tack pretty quick. We were fortunate to work with some great facilitators. Jonathan Poole facilitated our first sessions that we called Phase 1 from October to January, started in October of 2022. And then we had Penny Foster Fishman, who's a very well-known system change expert. She facilitated our community outreach, is what we call the phase 2. And she really put together this final report. And unfortunately, I miscommunicated with her, and so she was standing by to be zooming in on this today. And so she's handed off to me, so we'll do it. But here's again, if you really need to be crisp on this kind of thing, why are you doing this? And again, just a little backstory. When Uvalde, Texas happened, I kind of lost my head, and I wanted to chain myself to the doors because I didn't think our kids were safe. And I remember trying to get a hold of Kristen Jones Morgan, and I said, hey, we traded a few emails, and then she kind of ghosted me. And she said, I said, we got to get everybody to go on strike because we're not going to change this unless we really create something big. And she's like, now we're kind of buddies. And she said, look, we can't go on strike. And I thought you were crazy. So, you have to kind of move along the progression of being a little bit out there to, getting people on your caravan. And so, why did we do this? Why did we put all this effort into it? Was we wanted to see what we could do to reduce the chance of school shooting in our community. And just to remind everybody, our community is the kind of a place where these shootings happen. So I think it's like any problem, you have to admit that it's an issue before you can really address it. And then how can we create a school and community environment where all the children are safe and thriving? And of course, that's just part of a good education system anyway. Here's the reality about school shootings. 2020 was an outlier when you look at that map because of COVID. Kids weren't around. And then look at what happened in 2021 and 2022. So this is not a problem that is going away. Copycats seem to be a big part of that. People have even made the suggestion, well, maybe we shouldn't publicize that. I don't agree with that. I think you got to publicize this. That's the only way you fix it and work on it. So far to date in 2023, and this again blows me away, Education Week keeps stats. How many school shootings? How many people shot? How many kids killed? How many involved? So just a quick check on there, 34 year to date. So we still have a couple months left in this year, but maybe it'll be down. This is one I didn't know about, and again, it really does a good job of defining who are the shooters in these environments. And the median age of a school shooter is 16 years old. So I kind of net things out. People in school, junior high, high school, or recently out of high school are the people that tend to be the shooters. And, again, one of the things that we learned, we'll cover that in a minute, is kids are smart. And if somebody really wants to do some damage, it's very difficult to stop them. So we launched this initiative in October of 2022. It really started after the Uvalde shooting. But if you go ask people for money because you want to do something, you're not going to get very far, is what I learned. You're like, we went to people and they said, no, that's important. We don't want our kids to get shot, but we're not giving you money. So you can't, you can't just quit. You got to say, okay, well, we'll start out with no money and we'll keep working on it. And so we had some great people helping us. Kathleen Guy, who's a co-founder. A special shout out to Tim and Shelley Quinn, who's just amazing. And Tim wrote actually a letter to the editor of the Record Eagle, and so I didn't know him, and I called him after that. Somebody said, how'd you get roped into this thing? He said, don't write a letter to the editor.
Right.
So, anyway, people care about this stuff, and so that was a great part of it. So, again, round one, we got 30 concerned Traverse City citizens. We had a couple principals, an elementary principal, a senior high school principal. We had the former chief of police, who's unbelievable, Chief O'Brien. We had people from Munson Medical. We had Barb LaRue, who's a state of Michigan social worker type person who's been working to help kids for 30 some years, and she drove all the way like from Reed City or something in the wintertime to be there at 7 o'clock. It was absolutely amazing how people wanted to be involved in this. We had students again, will tell you the real scoop. We didn't have any guys. That was disappointing. Guy students, young men, don't engage in this stuff. That's a real problem. It's a societal problem. It's not a Traverse City problem. But guess who the shooters are? Guess who do more gun violence and taking their own lives? Young women do other things. Young guys act out in different ways. But it's a big deal. So again, we explored the factors contributing to school shootings. We read this really great book called The Violence Project, How to Stop a Mass Shooting Epidemic. We learned a ton of information from that. We had Greg Bird come in, who's the county emergency manager, a real all-star in what's going on. The new hire, Patrick McManus, was involved in the task force. So we just had a cross-section of people that were great, and we learned a lot. And I think when we were done with that, we said, you know, there's not one big thing. You know, if there was one thing, people would have solved this problem. And I think the thing that was most disappointing to me, and I knew this kind of up front, was if it was enough to be outraged, then we would have done something after Columbine. But outrage is not enough to make change, clearly, because we've had horrible, horrible things happen after that. And we have not, as a society, been able to change that. So, you know, our thinking was, you know, it's the old joke, you know, doctor, it hurts when I bang my head against the wall, and, you know, we'll stop doing that. So we said if we got to take a different approach to this. And so we said, we're not going to talk about the gun debate. We're not going to talk about Second Amendment stuff. Some people, I had a really good friend who's an attorney in town. He said he wouldn't serve on the committee because he said, unless you talk about getting rid of guns, you're just wasting your time. And I really respect that. There's certainly a lot of truth to that. Access to firearms is, if you don't have access to firearms, you don't have this issue. But clearly, we've got to work in the constraints that we have. So we didn't want to waste, I don't want to say waste time. We didn't want to spend time on that avenue. We wanted to focus on what we had a control of in our community and what we could do here. So that was really a big deal. You know, people in system change in other areas talk about moving upstream. And that's the old, you know, I think it's Desmond Tutu or somebody, you know, he said, you're downstream and these bodies keep coming by. You know, you got to get, if you want to figure out the problem, you got to move upstream and figure out why people are throwing these bodies in. So that's what we decided to do. And so here's what we concluded after those sessions when we got people together. And number one, I think, is really a big deal. You can't fortify your way to safety. Now, that's an important point because it doesn't mean physical safety isn't important. It's critical. But you cannot stop after you do physical safety. If you think about it, if most of the shooters are kids who are either in school or recently out of school, and they're familiar with school, they're going to figure out how to get in, or somebody's going to let them get in, or as other places have done, they shot through the door. So if you just think you can rest because you've got fortification done, you're really, really missing the iceberg. You know, I like the iceberg analogy where the tip of the iceberg above the water is physical security, but below it is all the other well-being things. And I think, again, that's one of our big aha moments is, you know, we talk so much about well-being, but I don't know that we've tied well-being to safety. You know, and that's really an important point. It mostly comes out in suicide and self-harm, but it can come out in these shootings. And so that's a really critical point for our community to understand, that the biggest tool we have is taking care of our kids so they don't get to that point where they want to explode. So we can't fortify our way to safety. I would just add one more comment there, is that spending funds on physical safety is important, but it gets to a point of really diminishing returns. So again, I commend TCAPS. I think you've done an excellent job of not chasing technology. It's not a technology problem. It's a kid well-being problem. That's number two, well-being is essential. Number three is, this is really a big deal. Family, school, community engagement and helping a compassionate approach are essential. People in the community want to be involved. I always tease, and this is going to really sound horrible, I won't even say it. You know, the fastest growing part of our population in Traverse City is what? Aging baby boomers, right? And they eat up housing and all these things. But they want to be engaged in the schools. They don't have kids. They may have grandkids, but they don't want people shooting up the Cherry Festival or a school. And a lot of them who came to the sessions are retired social workers, retired teachers, grandparents, ex-coaches, guys from golf league who sit around once the snow flies and don't do a whole lot. So we got to figure out a way to tap the aging baby boomers and get them to help, because parents are tapped out. And again, you talk to the guys at Traverse Heights and Blair, you know, they don't have people show up for their PTO. You know, they're lucky. It's a victory if the kid gets to school. You know, so that's something to me, because guess what? I'm one of those aging baby boomers. You know, that's something to me that really is an untapped resource, is figuring out a way to make that happen. And I will read right from that star up there. It's a big one, and kudos to Penny for putting this in there. Promoting physical, mental, emotional well-being among youth is the greatest investment we can make to prevent a school shooting in our community. And I would say if you take one takeaway from our message, that would be it. It is tied together. You cannot untie those things. All right, this is where I'm going to put my Penny Foster Fishman hat on now, because this is where Penny was going to come in and talk about the community sessions. And so one of the things we did after the first task force, where we had the same 30 people return, was we tried to expand it to getting a group from the community. And so we had 2 sessions, a session A and a session B, and we had a couple versions of those so people could attend either in person or Zoom. We had about 135 people attend those sessions. They were very well attended, and Penny did an excellent job promoting those. And the focus of those was, again, to get more community awareness about preventing school shootings. And again, one of the things was, how can we engage the community? The community doesn't feel engaged in TCAPS, I would say, and that's maybe a harsh statement. But if you think about things like NMC does a really good job of reaching out to people who have nothing to do with community college, don't have anybody in community college, don't care about community college, but they have really done a really good job. Part of that is because Kathleen Guy, because she started their foundation and got that file. TCAPS, that's the good news, right, is TCAPS has the real potential to get to these aging baby boomers, to people who don't have kids in the district, and make them see that it is a life and death issue. I think it's too easy to say, I'm going to the Villages for the winter, so I don't really care. You know, I'm saying, look, you got to be engaged here, because if we fortify the schools, if we make sure they're getting good mental health, but somebody falls through the cracks, they're going to shoot up the Cherry Festival. So it's not a school or something else thing. It's, we got to put kids at the top of the pyramid so they don't do that anywhere. So anyway, we had about 135 community members. It was great. We did some small groups, we did some presentations, and then we asked people to prioritize what they thought the community should do. So really got after what are the root causes of school shootings, and what can we do in the region to prevent school shootings. And the root causes, again, I'm not educated in this stuff, so it was a little surprising, and I think it's easy to say, well, yeah, everybody knows this stuff, you know, or, you know, we'll just arm teachers, or we'll just make the schools more secure, and we don't have to worry about this. But this is where you really go. This is where the gold is, if you want to make your school and community safe, and put on top of that, if you want to have them be able to learn. You know, if you're traumatized, or you're in crisis, you have mental health challenges, you feel bullied, lonely, unaware, you're not going to be a good learner. And again, you can just keep ratcheting that up to what happens with bad things. I'll tell you another kind of interesting story. We have a new pastor at the church I go to, and she's from Grand Rapids. And before she came up here, the Grand Rapids mayor got the people, local clergy together, and said, I want to talk with you. So she thought it was like about housing or race or something like that. She said, you know what the #1 issue in Grand Rapids is? Loneliness. How do we address loneliness? And I think, again, that's part, you know, the Surgeon General wrote a part on that, but I think that's a big part. Kudos to TCAPS, because I think the phone policy, the changes in phone policy, helps address loneliness. Kudos to TCAPS, because I think the policy change about what you can wear to graduation helps inclusion. You know, kudos to TCAPS because of Moms Demand Action, safe storage endorsement, access to firearms. So there's not one big thing, it's all these incremental things that make a difference. But when you look at this list, and again, if you are from an upper middle class family and you're fortunate to two parents, your orbit doesn't cross with a lot of these. So you know, our kids went to TCAPS. I didn't know any kids that were in crisis. We had a good friend's son take their life. I didn't know he was in crisis. You know, you don't know that stuff if you aren't looking. And as a community, we got to get better at looking for that. So Again, I apologize, I'm a little long-winded here. Common risk factors, again, unaware community, bullied, traumatized, in crisis, lonely, mental health. We separated, we took those requirements, but we said there's things you can do in the school, but there's the things that the community has to do too. So, you know, it's amazing to me because, you know, we want the school to do everything. And again, here's another great example of TCAPS doing the right thing. The health clinic at West, another great thing. Oxford wouldn't let that happen in their community. It was too polarized. You know, as you continue to do these good things to build this right culture, it makes us safer. So that's a really big deal. But basically, two steps, two different areas focused. What can we do inside the school that's school-based, and what can we do outside the school? Kind of hit me last night, or a few days ago when I was thinking about this. You know, by bringing healthcare into the schools, we're asking the schools to do everything that the community doesn't do. We're asking them to care for our most needy, to fix them when they're in crisis, to get them to school, to keep them in school, you know, and we're asking to build this bubble to protect them from this other world that we've created. It just seems crazy. But at least we can do those kind of things, and it's this culture that you guys really should be encouraged and congratulated because it's making a big difference. And this is one thing we really wanted to make sure to happen. TCAPS has made significant improvements to school safety, and I'm just going to hit a few of them because this is really meaningful to me. So Greg Bird, the county disaster administrator, is fantastic. He's known nationwide. Started working with TCAPS years ago, and he's done an excellent job of coordinating things. A tip of the cap to Dr. Van Wagner. When Uvalde happened, it was summertime basically, and he got the chance, he got in front of the line to get in the audit request that was done for the school system, which was great. You know, took the initiative to hire Pat McManus as director of physical safety, which was fantastic. One of the big things that we learned from our studies was, again, you've got to get this early intervention piece. And so many people stop after that physical safety. This makes me so happy that TCAPS, you know, created a position, a whole child systems, hired Misty Warner, who's got 10 years at one of our toughest schools at Blair as a social worker, to work on these early interventions and putting systems in place across the district. That is, to me, genius and really probably one of those things under the iceberg that is the biggest layer that people don't see. It's not flashy, it's not technology, but that can be a game changer. So, you know, again, kudos to you. It's about building this kind of culture, and you guys are really on it and doing a good job. What other kind of things can we do? You guys have added significantly to the mental health team, which is critical. You developed and targeted intentional 3-year professional development plan to ensure comprehensive and informed clinical approaches was fantastic. And then you've aligned with the Secret Service for early intervention and threat detection. I just give a shout out to Jessie Houghton and her team at Central High School. They have worked with their staff to go through the entire student body, make sure that everybody has a connection and they know the kids and they know the kids that are at the highest risk and focus on those kids. So it is, you know, again, a bad analogy maybe, but it's hand-to-hand combat. You have to do one-on-one and get to the kids, again, before they blow up. What other actions can TCAPS take to prevent a student from becoming a shooter? There's a bunch, and they're unknown. I shouldn't say they're unknown. We have a list of a whole bunch of suggestions. I think, again, the thing about the suggestions, it's easy to ignore them. You know, I think much like the strategic plan you have, my ask would be that you incorporate some of those into the strategic plan work that you're doing and that it just doesn't die there. But again, there's a whole bunch of things. The list is really long. Recommended school-based strategies, create a caring, connected school environment. Again, I'm a financial guy. To me, I hate that kind of because it sounds like, oh, you know, kumbaya, sit around the campfire. It is a huge deal. It is a huge deal that kids, again, going back to the Native American thing about graduation dress, going back to the phone policy, if you feel, here's my tagline, don't use this, but connected kids don't shoot up schools. So that's number one. Number two, expand student engagement opportunities. Again, a shout out to Ty Schmidt. I think he's a change agent. I think he's done a lot of great things that are working in that realm. And then a shout out to students. I think giving the chance for students to lead those kind of things has been great too. Expanded mental health, we talked about that, and enhanced screening. So here's the last one I'm going to do before I turn it over to Kathleen. And this is really important because Oxford had an independent review that was published a few days ago, 527 pages. And I'm just going to read from that, from the Free Press quoting that. So the independent investigation concluded that Oxford High School shooting on November 30, 2021 was avoidable. Had the district filed threat assessment policy, the report notes that individuals at every level in Oxford Community Schools, including the superintendent, the board, and administrators, failed to provide a safe and secure environment for students. Quote, our investigation has revealed that had proper threat assessment guidelines been in place and district threat assessment policy followed, the tragedy was avoidable. How sad is that? So kudos to you guys, you're doing a great job. I am so impressed with the culture that's being built, and the changes that are being done. And believe me, that doesn't happen if the board doesn't get along with the superintendent or the board doesn't get along with each other. So it really does start at the top. So I give you all a pat on the back. But this is the one that's really important. You can't just have policies in place. You can't just say, we've done the right things. You have to monitor it. If you don't monitor it, and monitor in my mind means people and money. If you don't put people and money at the problem, then you're not going to have the results that you want. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-founder, Kathleen Guy. She's like Dr. Jill Biden. She's a doctor, but she's not a medical doctor. She's a PhD doctor, and she's awesome. So go get them, Kathleen.
Okay. He's a bit taller than I am. So I just want to say, it's been a privilege for me to be an adult learner in this process. There is so much that I did not know about school safety and the upstream causes of school shootings. And so it's been a real edification for me to learn in this process. And it is time for our community to step up. We were heartened by the number of community folks who showed up for and participated in our public input sessions. That was wonderful because it exposed this wonderful beating heart of people in our community who, for one reason or another, decided that they needed to come learn more about this and to see what they might be able to do to affect positive change. And I guess we'd call that collective action for collective positive impact. Keeping our kids safe is really a communal effort. And it's something that we are committed to having happen this point forward. So there were a variety of recommended community-based strategies that emerged from the community input sessions. They identified this selection of potent community-based strategies to help focus on those upstream issues that Jay was talking about. And we know, because these have been found as the most effective approaches to prevent school violence. So whether it's creating this movement locally that demonstrates that this community cares about its kids, to reducing and responding to trauma, engaging and empowering youth, there's a whole host of possibilities here for us to implement. When we think about this and how very important it is, our kids are the future of our community. We know this to be true. We know that many students, even if they go away to college, come back to Traverse City. I have 2 children who are evidence thereof. Jay has 2 also that are evidence thereof. And if we don't invest in them when they are young, when we can reach out and encourage them to do all the things that we know will keep them healthy and safe, and the rest of us healthy and safe, we're missing a huge opportunity. There's an example on page 45 of the full slide deck that you have received from England. A couple of things that their community is doing to help their children and young people to thrive. They have a talking bench where somebody sits, whether they are a member of the health community or their community volunteers, every day and engage anyone who happens to walk by or who needs a listening ear. They also have community connectors who are trained ordinary residents who can advise about available community groups and services. Simple things that we can do. How can we nurture a caring and connected community? It takes elevating this as a value for this community, positive action, number 2, and number 3, financial resources. So picture Traverse City as the community best known for valuing its kids. From the very beginning of this process, I've said, gee, wouldn't it be great if we, Traverse City, could be known for this, just as we are well known for tourism. Imagine that. That's what we're aiming for. Under expanding mentoring opportunities across the community, according to the 2020 census, there are 38,428 men in Grand Traverse County, and there are 7,000, almost 300, in Traverse City. We know that we need to connect more boys with men who can be positive influences, given the average age of shooters and that almost 100% of the shooters are males. As Jay said, this is how that aggression is taken.
Sorry, could you repeat those numbers, please?
Sure. We have 38,428 men residing in Grand Traverse County, and in Traverse City proper, 7,291. Now, as of this morning, Big Brothers and Big Sisters have 125 male mentors. And as of this morning, they have 43 waiting for a match. We can do better. We must do better. As Mr. Rogers says, look for the helpers. And then where we spend our money shows what we value, under 3. So it's really important that we identify those resources that we know are needing to be applied to this effort. So we need to tap into our young and our young at heart. Promoting community awareness of risk and appropriate responses. This is a really inexpensive way for us to make our kids feel valued, our community to take helping action, and our schools and community to be safer. This is all about building community literacy, about youth who are at risk and where to seek help and support for them. We have a long way to go, I believe. So Safer Kids, Safer Schools is all about awakening our civic responsibility. Back to what Jay said earlier. And embracing community literacy as our new model of social action. We can. We must. We will. I want to call your attention to the recommended strategies that are in the appendix of the full report, and we'll run through them quickly here. We have multiple school-based strategies that were recommended as priorities that came out of our public input sessions. And then a whole host of community-based strategies, again, that emanated from those public input sessions. And we are committed to taking action. Questions you have of us? Do you have any questions?
So that last part went kind of fast, and it was a beautiful long presentation. What are your specific asks from the board?
Thanks, Holly. I think, again, we struggled with that because they're general and there are a lot of them. I wrote down my personal things. So number one is for the community to have consensus that kids are our number one priority. I think that can be tied into so many things. So that is ties into specifically TCAPS reaching out to people that don't have kids in school. You know, I think of Norte. Many people are familiar with Norte. Another great example. I get the Norte newsletter. It's fantastic. I don't have any kids in Norte. Guess what? I give money to them because I think they do a great job. And maybe I want to reserve a spot for a grandkid or two down the road. But that's an example of reaching out to people. You know, Kurt Rainey again and Brian Kay came to our Rotary Club. People were in tears almost. Why can't we get those stories out once a month, you know, to what great work is being done? You know, Kristen Jones was teasing with me the other day. She said, you know, after she'd been principal there, she was just wigged out, and she went to a previous administrator and said, you know, I got teachers coming out of the room, and she was being sarcastic. She said, you know, they're bloody and they had an arm chewed off, but we tell them, we pat them on the head and say, go back in the room. It's not your dominant arm. So that would be teacher appreciation, is a long way of saying that. Who can do teacher appreciation? The community and TCAPS both can do teacher appreciation. You guys don't have a lot of money to do that stuff, but we can raise money for teacher appreciation. And guess what? We got to appreciate the teachers at the harder places more. My understanding is you used to get a little bit of a stipend if you worked at some of the harder schools, and that doesn't happen anymore. So, you know, it's a lot easier if you're teaching. I'm not saying it's easier anywhere, so let me just make sure that's clear. It is not easy anywhere. But if you're at Eastern or Willow Hill, it's a different climate than if you're at Blair or Traverse Heights. And the families don't have time or resources to support those teachers. So there's a void that the community can step in. So TCAPS promoting that kind of stuff, I think, would a big one. One of the things we decided as next step for Safer Kids is Penny, who's not here today, has an initiative for all of Northern Michigan. It's called the Northern Michigan Mental Health Care Initiative, and I'm butchering that up a little bit. Northwest Michigan Behavioral Health Initiative. And they have subgroups under that. Subgroups that are staffed by people like us, people who work and have other jobs, tend to fall apart. You know, if TCAPS could put somebody on that behavioral health initiative and help pick up some of the momentum that people have expressed that they want to be involved in, would be fantastic. You know, those subgroups get involved, and they're coordinating like things to this new behavioral health system that they're trying to get built here, and other things, trying to recruit more social workers into the area, all those kind of things. You know, we could see a subgroup, Safer Kids subgroup, that focused on accelerating mentorship. You know, and trying to tie in Norte, trying to tie in Big Brothers, trying to tie in Scouts. I had somebody approach me, Scouts, you don't have a home anymore. Churches don't let them meet there, schools don't let them meet there. You know, they said, we got scholarships. Get some kids from Blair, get some kids from Traverse Heights. So there's different things. So this is a long answer to your question. So I think joining that behavioral health initiative, because we need somebody who's staffed to help organize the people who would be from the community. So that would be number one. Number two would be this outbound research, reaching out to people in the community. And then keep doing what you're doing. You guys are doing a great job. It really is, you know, again, the book we studied, they talked about the Swiss cheese approach. Everything has holes in it, but when you stack Swiss cheese layer on top of layer, those holes get closed. And I really believe strongly that your leadership, your working together, your culture that you've helped push down is really the big change, and those things are showing up. You have to just keep that going. And I don't know if you guys run for the board again, but we need to keep getting board people who are similar and understand this connection to well-being and learning and well-being and safety. So, sorry for the long answer.
Thank you. Someone just whispered to me that we do have a TCAPS person who is joining that initiative, correct? Yeah, so.
Awesome.
The beauty of that organization is that that's a backbone organization for us. So we don't have to create another nonprofit. We don't have to stand up something that doesn't already exist. We have all the advantages of supporting that backbone.
And that's an important point, because I'm not that well versed in it, but that person is probably already committed to a subgroup that's working on, you know, counseling for kids or whatever it happens to be. Ours would be a different new subgroup. So, you know, Misty, for example, would be a great person. And in fact, I'm coordinating a lunch tomorrow where Jill Silv from Norte is coming in. And they've hired an ex-TCAPS social worker, Abby Kaufman, who's now their person in Norte to help with well-being and coordinating and school liaison. So it would be great if we got Abby from Norte, if we got Misty from TCAPS, and they were kind of involved in that. That's a perfect thing. And those kind of things, again, are just magic. They're magic. And that's, that comes out in all the work, again, that TCAPS is doing. But one of the big levers we have in this community, besides people who care, people are here usually because they want to be here, but it's the natural resources. Getting kids outside, again, the phone policy, getting them off their phones. To me, that's a huge deal. I got interviewed by some of Jody Mackey's kids the other day at their video thing over at East Junior High. And I'm like, well, what do you think of this? And the guy's like, that's no big deal. And one guy who was videotaping said, oh, yeah, I wish I could have it at lunch. But that was it. It wasn't like, this is the worst. It's like all of a sudden parents and people got tired of telling kids no. That's no big deal. We moved on. Other questions?
I have a similar one. Towards the end of your presentation, you had 2 recommendations to TCAPS. One was to add more detection and intervention for kids who need it, and secondly was to monitor or evaluate the efficacy of efforts, particularly the extent of the expanded mental health services. So I wanted to ask, just like do you have ideas, best practices to share with the how? How do we add more detection and intervention, and how often does your group recommend the evaluation?
It's a great question, Josie. I don't have that. Penny may have that because that's an area she studies. But I was thinking the other day, if I had, if I was Jeff Bezos and I could do a big grant, I would do it on exactly that. How do we determine what state our kids are in from a well-being standpoint, and how do we check in with them? It'd be probably, again, as crazy as this sounds, it's kind of probably some phone-based app, that you're getting, a feel for that. And then the other one is, again, we are losing kids in population-wise, right? And people always gripe about, well, we have more administrators, and all that kind of stuff. The administrators need to have personal relationships with the students. Tim Quinn, who's a source of so much resource, he was a superintendent, I think it was in Green Bay. They had a 20% dropout rate. And they didn't get any more money. They said, look, everybody from the staff has this group of people in it, and they gave it to janitors, they gave it to the lunch lady, they gave it to the assistant principals. You had to check in with that person frequently, and their dropout rate went almost to 0. So again, I didn't answer your question directly, but I will get back to Penny and see if she has an answer to what people are doing in that area.
Yeah, I think we all collectively just want to make sure that your report is actually implemented, these recommendations are implemented, and that we continuously evaluate and report out on what we're doing.
Yep. Yeah, the Community Foundation did a recent study of, kids' well-being and asked students. Traditionally, TCAPS doesn't have good representation in those. You look at where most of the kids are. They're like from Benzie and other places, and I don't know if I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they do it through schools or other reasons, but those kind of things are tools that are out there, and I will get back to you, Josie.
Just for the record, that particular study, we had the most kids.
Did you? But percentage-wise,
Yeah.
I don't think it was.
Because it was, done by the students themselves.
Right.
Not by any staff.
Right. Yeah. And I got to believe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I got to believe in those other schools, they may have the staff may say, look, you're going to do this today, because seemed like they had a lot bigger percentages.
Not in that study. I mean, it was just done by the kids themselves.
Okay.
There was no staff involved. Like, we didn't even see any of it until Dave handed it to
Okay.
us. So that was one of the things we brought up.
Okay, good.
And I just have one comment to close the loop, Jay, because I liked what you had to say about the untapped resources in our community, the retirees who've got more time and perhaps money than us middle generation overextended parents. We have this TCAPS Lunch Buddies program.
Yes.
And that's a noontime commitment of only 1 hour once a week at all of our elementary schools. And last I knew, we still had a need at 2 in particular. I think it was Cherry Knoll and Blair. So if that's something you want to circle back to those folks and promote. And then for Traverse Heights, I know you and Ty Schmidt have created Roadrunner Nation.
Yeah.
That's another avenue to raise funds for their PTO.
Yeah, we're trying to do a community match. The Roadrunner Nation raised $10,000 for the first time ever, which was fantastic. And I think the match we've come up with so far is $2,500. We're committed to doing a dollar for dollar, up to 10. So we got some work to do there. But again, I think John came up with that suggestion that that community-based PTO thing is huge. God bless them. Blair has one parent on their PTO.
Wow.
Right. Yep. And lastly, I just want to say this is for the district. I have been cowed by how many clubs we have at the high school. I mean, there are over 50 clubs. Everything from math and chess to esports, quiz bowl, service like Key Club, guitar, so it spans all sorts of interests for kids. And that's a way to connect,
Big time.
like you said. But maybe, I don't know what systems are in place per se for the administrators to identify kids who aren't connected in some way with a sport or with a club that, maybe we could do more outreach in that respect to get them engaged. Because like you said, the kids who are connected are not the ones who are going to blow up the school.
And along that line too, I was not a fan of the field house thing when I first heard it promoted, and I've changed 180 degrees. We don't have community centers in our community really. I think those field houses could fill that role. You think about kids who go to camp, and if you go to camp, they have activities where you don't have to be a good athlete. You can be really uncoordinated and still they make games that are good. High schoolers still want to do that stuff. It's just we don't give them the opportunities. We stopped LEAP at 6th grade, and so many kids, who want to be active and do other things. So, we could have dodgeball, we could have kickball, we could have LARPing. I don't care, what it is. We could do all those things. So I'm a huge fan of supporting the millage. I'm a huge fan of supporting the field houses and using them creatively.
I like that idea. One of the biggest complaints I hear about kids, in particular at West, is the lack of outdoor time for kids that aren't in sports, right? Because a lot of them come from schools where they were either before this outside or had recess or maybe had a school that they were extensively outside. The other part, so I think the field house would help a little bit with that, but also I love the idea of the mentorship because I think of all of those kids who aren't in clubs, who aren't outgoing, and who maybe don't get a lot of attention at home, and there's so many of them that are just shy and introverted, who they miss all that, right? They miss those connections. So the more people you have checking in with them in a caring, loving way, the more they're going to feel connected.
There was a community-based suggestion too for a thing that was on the national news called We Dine Together. High school initiated, high school driven, and the focus was they got these kids from sports teams and from student council and other kind of leadership things, and their goal, they met for a little debrief before they went out into the lunchroom. Their goal was to meet with kids who didn't have friends. And I think even they had cards. They said, look, I'm going to keep an eye on you. Here's my stuff. If you need to text me, if you need to call me, whatever, And it was so good because it's kids doing this stuff. And they had this video camera of this probably 9th grader and this probably big senior football player dude. And their orbits never would have crossed. But, you need some of those, and this is a horrible thing to say, but you need some of those cool kids to be able to go to the kids that aren't cool and say, you know what, you are, I'll be your friend.
Yeah, that just made me think of one last thing I want to say, which is for our upcoming Student Advisory Council meeting, perhaps this is something we could get the kids' thoughts on, the students' thoughts on.
Yeah, they have a Students Demand Action group, which is a spin-off from Moms Demand Action. Mm-hmm. My goal was to get to them. I haven't done it yet, but what a great thing to have that group, which you're always trying to find ways to do something meaningful. Again, if you make that connection, that well-being leads to safety, then that's a great place for those people who are in the Students Demand Action group to do something tangible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would add one last shout out we've covered a lot of things with PTOs and things that we need, low-hanging fruit that we can easily support as a community, but some of the great work that we do with the Student Support Network as well. I don't think anyone realizes how meaningful that program can be and how critical it can be to really ties into this subject as well. So you. Okay, any other questions on today? Any other items? All right, with that, the next Board Executive Committee meeting is Thursday, November 30th at 9 a.m. in this room, and the next full meeting of the board is November 13th at 6 p.m. also in this room. With that, I adjourn the meeting. Thanks.